Justice never sends an advance notice. It simply shows up right on time, Chosen One. That single line should be enough to make the opposition uneasy because it points directly at the title and refuses to flinch. While someone was too busy grinning, scheming, and convincing themselves they held the upper hand, the universe had already been moving pieces behind the scenes, not slowly, not sentimentally, but with surgical precision. The instant they believed they were beyond reach was the exact instant the countdown started working against them. Picture it this way. A person devotes weeks to constructing a trap in the shadows, measuring every move, fully convinced their target will stumble right into it. But they overlook one crucial detail. Traps are indifferent to who assembles them. Once the mechanism is triggered, it only responds to pressure. And 3 hours ago, the wrong boot came down heavy. Here is the reality that should make your spine straighten. Research in behavioral science confirms that those who fixate on controlling other people almost always misjudge timing. They assume authority is built on strategy, when in truth, authority is built on alignment. When you are aligned, you do not chase justice. It shows up without requesting your approval, and when it arrives, it moves quickly, silently, and with striking intimacy. Chosen One, before we proceed, pause with me for a moment. If this message is landing a little too close, if it feels like it is validating things you already sensed but could never prove, take a breath and acknowledge that. And thank you, Chosen One, for being present. Please repay this message by simply tapping like and subscribe. Not for recognition, but to help carry this message to other souls standing at the threshold of clarity. It falls on all of us to forward what awakens people. Thank you for being part of this mission. You are not here by accident. You are part of a movement. Now let us return to what matters, because this is not hype, and it is not fantasy. This concerns timing, consequence, and why the universe never misses. Chosen One, open your eyes. Something shifted recently, and you sensed it even if you lacked the vocabulary for it. Conversations began fading. The atmosphere changed. Certain individuals suddenly vanished or started behaving erratically. That was not coincidence. That was the moment the pressure reversed course. The same force that had been directed at dismantling you quietly rerouted itself. What you are hearing right now is not a story, and it is not symbolic fluff. It is a pattern that echoes across lives, industries, families, and relationships. When someone invests too long in manipulating outcomes instead of refining themselves, they eventually collide with their own conduct. And when that collision occurs, it is rarely theatrical. It is internal, abrupt, disorienting. About 3 hours ago, someone connected to your struggle experienced a sharp unraveling. Not necessarily dramatic on the surface, but intense within. The kind of instant where the body feels wrong, the mind accelerates, and panic arrives without an obvious trigger. Science labels it stress overload. Psychology labels it cognitive collapse. The universe labels it balance being restored. This was not random illness. This was not misfortune. This was the moment the mass of their own intention finally crashed back onto them. Everything they tried to direct at you, fear, confusion, doubt, delay, circled back and demanded a receipt. Here is something worth noting. Neuroscience confirms that prolonged malicious intent drives the human nervous system into a permanent state of alert. Over time, the body loses the ability to distinguish between an outside threat and one generated internally. The tension turns inward. Sleep fractures, breathing alters. The heart stumbles. The body keeps score even when the mouth lies. They believed they were the predator, calm, cunning, in command. But what they failed to grasp is that you were never the prey. You were the mirror. Every action they took revealed more about them than about you. Every lie sharpened the blade that would eventually cut their own hand. Chosen One, you did not need to retaliate. That is the piece that confuses people. You did not expose them loudly. You did not play dirty. You did not strike back. You stayed in your lane, maintained your focus, and allowed time to do what it always does. Time does not hurry, but it never forgets. The universe does not shield by intercepting every blow. Sometimes it shields by letting people overextend, by letting them speak too much, push too far, assume too much. And once the balance tips, it does not ask for absolution. If you are wondering why this is unfolding now, it is because cycles do not close until lessons are unmistakable. You arrived at a point where you stopped questioning your value. You stopped shrinking to keep others at ease. That internal shift resonates louder than any argument. Once that occurred, the situation could not continue the same way. And here is the part that genuinely matters. This justice was not about revenge. It was not about punishment. It was about removal. Removing influence, removing access, removing the false sense of command someone had over your direction. That is why it feels sudden. That is why it feels final. Chosen one, you were being observed not to be cornered, but to be tested, to see whether you would shatter, plead, or grow bitter. Instead, you became still. And stillness is dangerous to anyone who thrives on chaos. What is unfolding now is the universe correcting an imbalance quietly, firmly, without spectacle. And while they are preoccupied trying to comprehend what went wrong, you are being advanced without resistance. So, chosen one, before we go further, pause here with me. If you are still listening, it is not by chance. Messages like this do not capture random individuals. They capture the ones who already felt the shift before the words verified it. And if this title drew you in, it is because part of you already understood something had flipped, that justice did not merely move, it landed. So do this for yourself. Let the algorithm recognize that this message matters. Tap like, subscribe, whichever button keeps this conversation breathing, not for metrics, but so it reaches the others standing exactly where you once stood. Leave a simple comment below, just the number 777. Not as magic, not as superstition, but as a signal that you are locked in and paying attention. It communicates to the universe and honestly to your own mind that you are prepared to perceive clearly instead of guessing in the dark. And if you feel it, if you truly feel the weight and clarity of what is being shared here, consider supporting the work behind it. These messages do not materialize from nowhere. Even the smallest support keeps this mission moving and helps deliver truth to the people who need it most. Now take a breath, chosen one, because from here on, we are breaking this down step by step. And if you are truly meant to receive this, you will feel the pull to remain until the very end. Let us begin. Number 1. The snare she constructed in the shadows detonated in her own face. The most ironic aspect of a hidden scheme is that it always believes it is invisible right up until it explodes. Chosen one, this is where things stop being ambiguous and start becoming uncomfortable for the opposition, because nothing that was done behind your back remained concealed. Not the whispers, not the lies dressed as concern, not the quiet sabotage, not the manufactured smiles with sharp intentions beneath them. Every move they thought was clever got logged, not by people, by reality itself. The universe does not require witnesses, it requires patterns, and patterns never deceive. Here is the truth they failed to account for. You do not have to hear a lie for it to leave residue. The environment retains energy. Psychology confirms this. Sustained malicious intent creates stress loops, not just in the target, but in the sender. The more someone schemes, the heavier their own system becomes. Sleep fractures, focus deteriorates, anxiety spikes. They start revealing tells. That is why secrecy always collapses. The body cannot keep secrets indefinitely. She operated in silence, convinced that darkness equals safety, that if no one observed her hands, the damage would not trace back. But darkness does not shield intent. It amplifies it. It removes accountability until pressure accumulates so intensely that the release becomes violent. That is what just occurred. The very space she believed would conceal her ended up illuminating her. Consider it this way. Someone pours poison into a river upstream, assuming the current will carry it away. But rivers loop, currents circle, and eventually that water always returns. Not as revenge, as chemistry, cause and effect with zero emotion attached. At this point, you may be asking yourself, why now? That question matters because timing governs everything. This did not occur randomly. It occurred because the scheme reached critical mass, lies stacked on lies, moves piled on moves, and eventually, weight triggers collapse. The universe does not rush justice. It waits until there is no escape route remaining. What she released was not mystical. It was psychological warfare, manipulation, projection, quiet attempts to destabilize you so she could feel stable. But here is the portion people despise hearing. You were never fragile enough for it to succeed. You felt the pressure, certainly, confusion, exhaustion, moments of self-doubt. That does not mean it worked. It means it rebounded. And when intent rebounds, it does not vanish. It returns to sender with interest. That is why the unraveling felt abrupt. One moment she believed she was ahead. The next her system could not hold itself together. Breathing irregular, thoughts racing, body reacting without permission. That is not misfortune. That is overload. When someone resides too long in deception, their nervous system remains in constant threat mode. Eventually it panics without a visible threat, because the threat was internal all along. You may also be wondering, did I cause this? No. And that question proves why this worked in your favor. You did not push. You did not strike back. You did not sink into obsession. You stayed focused on survival, growth, and getting through the day. That restraint matters. It keeps your hands clean while the universe handles the accounting. Here is a hard truth. People who scheme against you are not strong. They are terrified. Confident individuals build. Insecure individuals interfere. And interference always leaves fingerprints. She believed she was playing chess while you were playing life. She planned moves. You evolved. That gap is lethal. There was a warning phase. There always is. Subtle discomfort, small signs, moments where she could have stopped. But obsession makes people ignore exits. The more someone convinces themselves they are correct, the less they listen. And once that threshold is crossed, the outcome locks in. This is why justice feels cold. No speeches, no dramatic confrontations, just consequences arriving unannounced. One moment they are fine, the next everything feels wrong. The body rebels, the mind scrambles, control evaporates, and suddenly they are asking, how did this happen? The answer is simple. It did not just happen. It accumulated. Chosen One, understand this clearly. You were not spared because you are lucky. You were spared because you did not match the frequency of destruction. You did not become what tried to dismantle you. That matters more than any defense. And here is the portion that should straighten your posture. This was not the end. This was the interception, the point where the trajectory shifted. The trap never reached you because it folded inward first. That is why things feel lighter now, quieter, less resistance. The noise ceased because the source imploded. If you are feeling calm instead of exhilarated, that is another confirmation. Genuine justice does not pump you up. It settles you. It removes the background tension you grew accustomed to carrying. You do not celebrate, you breathe. Let this be motivation, not distraction. You do not gloat, you do not explain. You do not reopen doors that close themselves. You advance cleaner, clearer, and sharper. Because while she is occupied dealing with the fallout of her own actions, you are being repositioned without obstacles. The scheme failed, not because you fought it, but because it was never constructed on truth. And anything constructed on lies collapses under its own weight. Number 2, she did not collapse all at once. She walked into it grinning. People do not arrive in darkness by accident. They arrive there one rationalization at a time. Chosen One, this section matters because adversaries love to pretend their collapse was sudden. A bad day, bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. That narrative is comforting, but it is fabricated. What happened to her did not begin with consequences. It began with permission. Permission she granted herself to cross lines quietly, to justify thoughts she should have suppressed, to nurture resentment instead of starving it. This descent never begins loudly. It begins in places no one applauds. Private thoughts, silent comparisons. The moment jealousy ceases being a feeling and starts becoming a plan. Psychology validates this. When envy remains unchecked, it rewires perception. People stop perceiving others as human and start perceiving them as obstacles. That is when empathy shuts down and obsession clocks in for full-time duty. Picture this. Someone stands at the top of a staircase in the dark. The first step down feels harmless. Then another, then another. Each step feels minor enough to justify. No alarms, no collapse. But gravity does not care how confident you feel. Eventually the bottom arrives. Her spirit did not crack overnight. It bent, thought by thought, choice by choice. She told herself stories to remain comfortable, that she was correct, that she was wronged, that you deserved whatever came your way. And the more she repeated those lies, the more natural they felt. That is how darkness operates. It does not scream. It whispers until it sounds like your own voice. You may be wondering, why me? That question always surfaces here, because when someone is already unstable, they do not target random people. They target mirrors. They target those who highlight their own stagnation simply by existing. Your growth, your calm, your refusal to implode triggered something she did not want to confront. Here is a brutal truth. Hatred feels powerful to people who feel powerless. It provides them direction, a target, something to blame instead of examining inward. That is why she mistook hatred for strength. It granted her the illusion of control without requiring growth. Picture this metaphor. A person drinks salt water believing it will cure thirst. At first it feels like relief, but every sip dehydrates them further. That is resentment. It feels validating initially, but it slowly erodes the system, consuming it. She did not merely complain. She sought reinforcement. She searched for places, people, and ideas that would validate her worst impulses. Environments matter. When someone steps into spaces constructed on desperation, bitterness, and shortcuts, those spaces do not heal them. They amplify what is already fractured, and this is where the adversary truly miscalculated. Speaking your name with intention is not power. It is exposure. When someone directs sustained negative intent at another person, they tether themselves energetically and psychologically. Studies show that fixation elevates stress hormones, paranoia, and emotional volatility. The target often feels lighter over time. The sender feels heavier. Picture this. Someone ties a rope around your waist, intending to pull you down, but they do not realize the rope is anchored to their own body. Every pull drags them closer to the edge, too. She believed she was erasing you. Instead, she was carving her own name deeper into the consequences ledger. The universe does not respond to hatred the way films portray. It does not explode. It compresses. It waits. It allows people to keep choosing until the math becomes undeniable. You may be asking, could she have stopped? Yes, many times. That is the uncomfortable portion. There were moments when she felt the warning signals. Fatigue, anxiety, sudden unease, the sense that something was off. Those were not attacks, those were exits. She ignored them because obsession makes people feel special. Here is another quote that cuts clean. When someone chooses darkness long enough, they stop noticing the light is not gone. They simply turn their back to it. This was not about you being punished or tested. It was about alignment. You stayed focused on building, healing, surviving, evolving. She stayed focused on interference. Those paths do not run parallel indefinitely. Eventually they split hard. Picture a train switching tracks. One track leads forward, steady, boring, disciplined. The other leads toward a cliff, fast, dramatic, emotional. Both feel valid initially. Only one ends well. She believed secrecy would shield her, that as long as things happened quietly, nothing would rebound. But secrecy does not erase intent. It concentrates it. The longer someone lives a double internal life, the louder the internal pressure becomes. That is why collapses feel sudden. They are not sudden, they are delayed. You may also wonder, why do I feel calm instead of angry? Because anger belongs to people who still require validation. Calm belongs to people who have outgrown the battlefield. You do not need revenge when the system corrected itself. Here is a fact people despise. The universe does not punish people for being bad. It responds to imbalance. When someone pours excessively into destruction, manipulation, and control, they tip their own scale. The correction is automatic. Another metaphor. Imagine overloading a power grid. Lights do not flicker immediately. Everything seems fine until suddenly everything shuts down at once. That is what occurred here. Chosen one, understand this clearly. You were not protected because you were louder. You were protected because you did not abandon yourself. You did not sink to match her depth. You did not let bitterness rewrite your character. This section exists to answer the quiet fear some of you carry. What if she tries again? That fear originates from not recognizing the cost she already paid. People rarely repeat actions that nearly destroyed them, and if they do, the system corrects faster the second time. She did not lose because you attacked her. She lost because she kept choosing the wrong fuel. Hatred burns fast and leaves nothing but ash. Discipline burns slow and builds steel. Let this sink in. While she was descending step by step, convincing herself she was gaining power, you were ascending without spectacle. No shortcuts, no secret plots, just quiet alignment. And when those two paths finally crossed, one collapsed inward, the other kept moving. That is not luck. That is structure. Number 3, the blade she raised turned around and asked who she truly was. The moment you use a weapon to dominate someone, it stops being a weapon and starts being a mirror. Chosen One, this is where her illusion finally shattered. She was not handed power. She was handed a test, a choice wrapped in temptation. And like most people who crave control, she ignored the warning because warnings do not flatter the ego, they threaten it. That tool, that so-called advantage she clutched so tightly, was not some magical shortcut. It was a feedback loop, a mirror disguised as leverage. Tools do not merely act. They amplify the intent of the person wielding them, and when the intent is rotten, amplification becomes exposure. Picture this. Someone turns up the volume on a microphone believing it will make their voice stronger, but the room is full of static. The louder they go, the worse it sounds. That is what occurred here. She believed escalation meant elevation. In reality, it just made her inner noise impossible to ignore. Here is a fact people despise admitting. Control tactics do not strengthen the user, they drain them. Psychology demonstrates that people obsessed with manipulating outcomes experience accelerated emotional burnout, paranoia, and loss of self-trust. The mind starts watching itself. The body stays tense. Sleep disappears. Power becomes a performance instead of a state. She believed the tool would lift her above you. Instead, it forced her to stare at herself without filters. Every time she tried to aim it outward, it reflected something back she did not want to see. Fear, envy, emptiness, the very things she was fleeing from. You may be wondering, why did it not touch me? Because mirrors do not harm what is not aligned with them. You were not vibrating with the same intent. You were not reaching for control. You were focused on survival, growth, and staying sane. That difference matters more than any defense. Another way to perceive it, imagine pouring gasoline on a fire you believe belongs to someone else, only to discover the fire is inside your own house. You did not need to light the match. She did that herself. Here is the gut punch she never anticipated. Tools do not choose sides. The universe does not either. It simply responds to coherence. When someone attempts to bend reality, instead of aligning with it, reality bends them back. This is why the consumption felt slow initially, then sudden, then overwhelming. Mirrors do not shatter instantly. They crack quietly, until one day the reflection is all you can see. Chosen One, take this as confirmation. You were not protected by luck. You were protected by not becoming what tried to use you. And that restraint turned her weapon into her confession. Number 4, reality does not negotiate, it collects. You do not get punished for what you do, you get shaped by it. Chosen One, this is where fantasy ends and mechanics begin. There are rules embedded in reality that do not care about bitterness, intention, or how justified someone feels. You do not get to bargain with outcomes just because you are emotional. You do not get exceptions because you feel wronged. Systems do not bend, they respond. Here is the portion people avoid. Consequences are not dramatic. They are accurate. What someone invests energy into, especially in private, builds momentum. Thoughts repeated become habits. Habits harden into patterns. Patterns evolve into environments, and environments eventually turn inward. That is not morality. That is physics of behavior. Imagine planting thorns and being startled when your hands bleed every time you reach down. That is what occurred here. She assumed manipulation meant mastery. She thought she could stir forces she did not understand and step away untouched. But reality does not function like a remote control. It functions like a boomerang. Another way to perceive it, Imagine shaking a soda can violently, then calmly setting it down and pretending nothing happened. The explosion does not occur immediately. It waits. Pressure accumulates quietly, and when it finally releases, it looks sudden to everyone who ignored the shaking. She believed she could influence outcomes without being affected by them. That belief alone sealed the result. The moment someone attempts to bend the system instead of aligning with it, the stress reroutes internally. Anxiety spikes, focus collapses, the body starts malfunctioning under invisible pressure. Here is a fact backed by psychology. Chronic deception and manipulation elevate cortisol levels long-term. That hormone erodes clarity, sleep, digestion, and emotional regulation. In simple terms, the chaos she aimed outward began assembling inside her first. You may be asking, why does it feel so final? Because thresholds exist. Once sufficient weight is added, reversal becomes impossible. Not because the universe is cruel, but because systems protect balance, not comfort. Another quote to lock this in. Reality does not seek revenge. It restores equilibrium. Chosen one, observe what did not occur. You did not have to expose her. You did not have to confront her. You did not have to explain your innocence. That is how you recognize this was not personal. It was structural. Imagine a bridge overloaded past capacity. It does not collapse because it hates the traffic. It collapses because the math demands it. That is the truth here. What she sent out did not miss you. It rerouted. And once rerouted, it could not be recalled. This is not a warning story. It is confirmation. You did not lose control. You never needed it. The system already handled what never belonged in your hands. And once reality collects, it does not issue refunds. Number 5, the snapback moment they never saw coming. The most dangerous moment for a trap is when the target never even notices it existed. Chosen one, this is the exact point where the story flips, and it flips quietly. You did not sense danger. You were not bracing for impact. You were simply advancing, mind on your own life, unaware that something had been aimed in your direction. That matters, because protection functions best when you do not have to perform for it. The setup looked ordinary on the surface. Nothing dramatic. No alarms, no warning signs screaming at you to react. And that is why it failed. The universe had already marked the moment before the move was even released. Not emotionally, mechanically. Timing had already been locked. Here is what people misunderstand. Reversals do not occur because someone deserves saving. They occur because alignment cancels interference. You were not vibrating at the same frequency as the attack. You were not feeding fear. You were not entertaining obsession. So when the plan left her hands, it had nowhere to land. Imagine throwing a punch in a dream and hitting nothing but air, then losing balance and falling on your own face. That is what occurred here. Force without grounding always snaps back. Another way to perceive it, think of attempting to pour poison into a sealed container. The liquid does not disappear. It spills back over the hands holding it. The container did not fight. It was simply closed. You may be wondering, why did it reverse instead of just disappearing? Because energy does not vanish. It redirects. Psychology shows that suppressed aggression often rebounds inward as anxiety, panic, and physical stress. What was aimed outward began detonating internally instead. Here is a clean truth. You did not neutralize anything. You did not block anything. You did not even know you were being targeted. That is what makes this land harder. The universe handled it without needing your awareness. That is not luck. That is insulation. Another quote to let this sink in. You do not win by swinging back. You win by being untouchable. The moment she released her plan was the same moment resistance appeared, not as confrontation, as containment. A hard stop she could not see or override. The pressure had to go somewhere, and it was not permitted near you. If you are asking yourself, why do I feel lighter now? That is your answer. The background interference cut off. The noise source shut down. Calm returned. Not because the world changed, but because access was revoked. The reversal was not dramatic, it was final. And the most terrifying portion for the adversary is this. You kept walking forward, never knowing how close they believed they came. That is real protection. Number 6. When the mask slipped, everything beneath it panicked. Confidence borrowed from deception always expires without notice. Chosen one, this is the phase nobody glamorizes because it is ugly, disorienting, and impossible to conceal. This is where her borrowed strength evaporated. Not slowly, not gracefully. One day she felt in control, sharp, ahead of the game. The next, fear crawled in and refused to leave. That is what happens when power is not real. It cannot survive pressure. Here is the truth. When someone constructs their sense of strength on manipulation, it only functions as long as the environment cooperates. The moment reality pushes back even slightly, everything collapses at once. The confidence was not confidence. It was tension, and tension always snaps. Imagine holding a heavy weight with locked arms, pretending it is easy. For a while, it works. People even believe you. Then the muscles shake. Then they give out, and suddenly, everyone perceives the strain you were concealing. That is exactly what occurred here. Fear did not just show up, it replaced her entire operating system. Decisions grew sloppy, reactions grew emotional, stories stopped aligning. Psychology labels this cognitive dissonance. When someone cannot reconcile who they believe they are with what is actually happening, the mind fractures under the stress. Confusion becomes permanent. You may be wondering, why did she start blaming everyone? Because blame is the final refuge of a collapsing identity. Accepting responsibility would mean admitting the foundation was rotten. That is too painful for most people. So they scatter the guilt, hoping it sticks somewhere else. Another metaphor. Imagine a cracked dam under rising water. Instead of repairing the crack, the operator yells at the river. That is blame, loud, pointless, and useless against pressure. Here is a hard fact. Studies show that when people lose perceived control, their behavior becomes more erratic, defensive, and self-exposing. They talk too much, react too fast, make mistakes they never would have made before. Exposure is not forced, it leaks. She never recognized the actual line she crossed was not about you. It was about order, about trying to bend reality to feed ego instead of adjusting herself. Systems do not tolerate that long term, not out of morality, out of necessity. Here is the gut punch quote to lock this in. You can disrespect reality for a while, you just cannot outrun the invoice. Chosen one, notice something important. You did not need to expose her. Her behavior accomplished that on its own. When pressure rises, truth surfaces always. This collapse was not loud revenge. It was quiet revelation. And once someone is exposed to themselves, there is no way back to pretending. Number 7, they did not come for you by accident. You disrupted their deceptions just by existing. Nothing triggers insecure people faster than someone who is calm without permission. Chosen one, let us address this clearly because this question always surfaces right here. Why you? Why were you singled out when you were simply trying to live your life, mind your business, and stay sane? The answer is not mystical or flattering. It is structural. Your presence disrupts unstable systems. You do not have to be loud. You do not have to flex. You do not even have to succeed publicly. Your peace alone is offensive to people who survive on chaos. Your clarity exposes confusion without uttering a word. Your consistency highlights their instability. That contrast registers as an attack to someone already fractured inside. Imagine this. A room full of smoke, everyone coughing, pretending it is normal. Then someone opens a window. The smoke does not blame the fire. It blames the window. That is you. You did not create the mess. You simply let air in. Here is a fact. Psychology confirms it firmly. People with unresolved internal conflict often externalize blame onto the nearest stable target, not the strongest, the clearest, because clarity feels like judgment when you are hiding from yourself. You may ask, did I provoke this? No, you revealed it, and those are very different things. You did not threaten her life. You threatened her narrative, and narratives are everything to people who cannot face reality. Another metaphor. Imagine a counterfeit bill passing through a crowd unnoticed until it encounters a scanner. The scanner did not attack the bill. It simply told the truth. And truth ends games fast. Every plan aimed at you was already flawed because it assumed you were the problem. You were not. The imbalance was internal. That is why none of it adhered. The universe does not support misaligned intent. It logs it, measures it, then quietly redirects it back where it belongs. Here is the quote that settles this. You do not get targeted for being weak. You get targeted for being undeniable. You were not walking through this alone, even when it felt isolating, not because someone swooped in dramatically, but because the system itself favors coherence. When you stay grounded, honest, and forward-moving, interference has nowhere to attach. You did not dodge the shadow by fighting it. You outgrew the room it needed to survive. And here is the final truth they despise. No amount of plotting outmaneuvers alignment. No shadow outpaces structure. When someone moves against reality itself, reality does not argue. It simply removes their access to you. Number 8, truth did not kick the door in. It rose and left her exposed. This was not payback. It was truth finally growing weary of concealment. Chosen one, this moment right here is where people misunderstand what they are witnessing. They want to label it revenge, because revenge feels emotional, loud, and human. But this was not that. This was truth surfacing on its own schedule. No anger, no chasing, no scorekeeping, just reality lifting the veil and letting things be perceived exactly as they are. Nothing was taken from her. Nothing was stolen. She drank from what she filled herself. The cup did not display your downfall, because your downfall was never in it. What it reflected back was her own heart, unfiltered, unprotected, and undeniable. And once someone is compelled to face themselves without distortion, the collapse occurs naturally. Imagine this. A dirty window that has been fogged up for years suddenly gets wiped clean. The view outside did not change. The mess was always on the glass. That is what truth does. It does not generate damage. It reveals where it already existed. Here is a fact people do not enjoy. Truth does not require allies. It does not require timing approval. It rises when the internal pressure becomes too heavy to contain. Psychology shows that people living double lives eventually experience exposure through stress behaviors, slips, contradictions, emotional leaks. Truth does not attack. It leaks out of cracks. You may be wondering, why does it feel like so many things collapsed around her at once? Because when one lie falls, it pulls others down with it. Deception is a stack, not a single brick. Once the base gives, the rest follows fast. Another metaphor. Imagine a stage prop holding up an entire set. It looks solid until someone leans on it. Then everything caves in at once. That is what occurred, not because you pushed, because it was hollow. Here is a quote to lock this in. Truth does not chase people down. It waits until there is nowhere left to run. Chosen one, observe where you were during all of this. Still standing, still moving, still untouched. Not because you were special in a dramatic way, but because you were not aligned with the collapse. Structures do not fall on people who are not standing under them. Others may stumble. Others may fall apart. That is not your burden to carry. What matters is this. The truth rose. Justice revealed itself quietly, and none of it came near you. That is not coincidence. That is positioning. Number 9. She did not betray you. She betrayed her own internal alarm. The most expensive mistake is ignoring the voice that told you to stop. Chosen one, this is where the narrative cuts deeper than surface drama. Her collapse was not caused by enemies, rivals, or misfortune. It was not even caused by you. It was caused by something far more dangerous. Repeatedly ignoring that quiet inner signal that says, "This is not right. Turn back now." Everyone receives that signal. Not everyone listens. Conviction is not loud. It does not threaten. It does not shame. It nudges. And every time someone ignores it, they lose a little bit of internal alignment. Over time, that loss compounds. The mind learns how to justify. The heart learns how to numb. And eventually, the person cannot distinguish between instinct and impulse anymore. Here is a hard truth. Hatred does not travel outward indefinitely. It loops. It always finds its way back to the source because it requires a host to survive. Psychology confirms this. Sustained hostility increases stress, weakens emotional regulation, and collapses self-trust. Poison does not disappear when you throw it. It seeps into the one holding the container. Imagine this. Someone pours acid hoping it will eat through someone else's floor, but the container is cracked. The acid does not wait. It eats through the hands first. That is what occurred here. She did not fall because the universe turned against her. The universe remained neutral. It simply stopped shielding someone who kept violating their own internal boundaries. Protection does not adhere to people who abandon themselves. Alignment does. You may be wondering, why did her actions feel so personal toward me? Because when someone ignores their own conviction long enough, they search for external targets to justify the internal damage. You became a symbol, not the cause. Symbols are easier to attack than the truth. Another metaphor. Imagine a car with a flashing warning light on the dashboard. Instead of repairing the engine, the driver covers the light with tape and keeps driving faster. The breakdown is not sudden, it is guaranteed. Here is the quote that seals this section. Betraying others is optional. Betraying yourself always collects. She aimed at what was stable, grounded and insulated, not because it was weak, but because it reminded her of what she refused to become. That attempt did not harm you. It exposed the fracture within her. Chosen one, let this land clearly. You were not protected because someone fought for you. You were protected because you stayed aligned, and alignment is the one thing sabotage cannot touch. She unraveled because she walked away from her own warning system. You stayed intact because you listened to yours. Number 10. This was never about her collapse. It was about your calibration. What you survive is not random. It is training. Chosen one, this moment is not here for entertainment or validation. It is instructional. What you witnessed was not just someone else falling apart. It was you being shaped in real time. Pressure reveals, but it also forges. And this chapter exists to sharpen your awareness, not inflate your ego. Here is the quiet truth. Nothing inside you is neutral. Every thought you entertain feeds something. Every word you repeat builds momentum in one direction or another. This is not about being flawless. It is about being intentional. People who drift mentally end up living inside outcomes they never selected. Imagine this. You plant seeds every day, even when you do not mean to. Some seeds grow gardens, others grow weeds. Ignoring the soil does not halt growth, it just guarantees chaos. That is why inner discipline matters more than outer defense. You may be asking, so what am I supposed to do with this? Not celebrate, not fear it. Learn from it. Let it refine how you move, how you speak, how you react when no one is watching. Power is not loud. It is precise. Here is a fact that grounds this. Studies show that people who practice deliberate thought control, choosing responses instead of reacting, experience higher emotional stability and long-term success. In simple terms, guarding your inner world makes you harder to derail. Another metaphor. Think of your mind like a control room. Every unchecked thought is a button pressed without permission. Eventually, systems overload. Calm people are not calm by accident. They manage the panel. This lesson is not telling you to shrink. It is telling you to move clean, walk gently. Not because you are weak, but because unnecessary force attracts unnecessary resistance. Speak deliberately, because words do not just communicate, they condition. Guard your inner world, because once it is stable, nothing external can hijack it. Here is the quote that locks this in. You do not rise by watching others fall, you rise by refusing to fall the same way. Chosen one, this was your reminder. Stay aware, stay grounded, build intentionally, because what is coming next is not about survival anymore. It is about direction. Number 11, the machine that breeds envy and chews people up for believing it. They did not fail because they were insufficient. They failed because they believed the wrong scoreboard. Chosen one, this portion matters because the same environment that twisted her thinking still exists around you right now. Nothing changed out there. The noise is the same. The comparisons are louder than ever. The world still distributes fake scorecards and informs people their worth is based on applause, speed, beauty, money, or visibility. That machine does not just distract people, it feeds on them. She did not wake up hateful. She was trained into it. Comparison rewired her mind. Competition replaced curiosity. False measures of success became the ruler she used to judge herself and everyone else. And when you live like that, someone else's peace registers as an insult. Imagine this. You are running on a treadmill while observing someone else walking calmly past you on solid ground. Instead of stepping off, you start running harder. That is envy. Exhaustion mixed with resentment. Here is a fact that cuts clean. Studies show that constant comparison increases anxiety, reduces self-worth, and fuels hostility. The more people measure themselves against others, the less stable they become internally. Eventually, they do not want to improve. They want to interrupt. You may be asking, why did I not fall into that? Because alignment beats comparison every time. You were not trying to impress the room. You were trying to understand yourself. That single difference kept you out of the trap.